because my issue was how Coventry was involved in the last 50 years in the development of the race relations within the city and sometimes beyond as well. But I've tried to stay within the city more, but obviously there's an impact which come from other cities onto us, so you can't really ignore totally. Coventry, as you know, is a diverse city now. It was always. In reality is that lots of people came from other areas during Second World War and so on. Even in Villanol, there was hostel after the Second World War to have the people who were affected by the war, they were settled there. And in also my background looking at, because on the other day I was representing Indian Work Association on that, although I also chair Coventry Against Racism. So Indian Work Association actually started in 1938 here in Coventry as a history. It was the first of its kind at that time. Now we can see the branches everywhere. But the main issue was actually to address the issue of first about the work and possibly racism, which was there. And the third issue was because there were very few people, they were living scattered away in the city. So it was also a social gathering. So these were the main purposes of that, getting together and also talking about work, and then also trying to help each other with the work and the issue of facing discrimination. That's where the whole project from Indian Work Association started. Generally in Coventry, we had difficulty. There was a guy in Coventry, his name was Cllr Jordan. He was actually born, well, let me get the facts right, because it's just Cllr Jordan was Coventry guy, and he was involved with the issues socially, mainly on the issue of race, and he actually he was a teacher in Stoke Secondary School, and he was sacked in 1962 because of his activities in the racial issues. That's why he was sacked. And then obviously he also founded National Socialist Movement in 1962. And he also had the punishment, I think he went to jail twice for various issues, and he also appeared in Trafalgar Square during a big rally and against the non-white people. So that was here. So he also started the National Socialist Movement on 20th of April 1962. That was the date which he started. And that's, I'm talking because he was a Coventry boy. And also he actually passed away here in 2009, I think. But he was very active on those issues, thinking himself as a socialist, but also working for the White Defence League or something. I think it was a White Defence League which was set up in 1960. So that's where the Coventry issue was more. Then obviously we had later on influx, well not influx, there was people coming in Coventry from various areas from after Second World War, who settled, because including my father-in-law, who actually was in Burma during the war, Second World War. He was a soldier in Burma as part of the British Indian Army. So those people who came here, they looked for the jobs, there was discrimination here. What I mentioned the other day, one good example was of explaining. He used to live in Chandos Street, not far away from Clay Lane. The other end goes to Clay Lane. but there was an ex-army service club on Clay Lane, which was actually opposite to his street. Despite being a former soldier or ex-soldier from British Army, he was not allowed to go there and have a drink. That kind of racism was there. And also, when there was issue I mentioned at that time, we were not allowed to be the members of the workmen's clubs. That Coventry Street, there's a barracks club, which we were not allowed. So we used to go there, do the picketing outside with the placards in the evening. Then the customer base actually fell because of our protests in the 80s rather. I can't remember exactly which day, a year that happened, but I do remember that the club actually failed because of that. So a group of Indians, workers, they got together, they put the money together, they bought that club. And it is still, even today, owned by an Indian guy, this Barry's Club. So that is a part of the process of our development of racial development rather in the city. I was involved through the temples. I was the secretary of Sri Guru Das Temple in Jesmond Road. I became the secretary of this in 1978, and obviously there was discriminations and so on all the time. And there were 2 murders in the city in 80s, or 81 I think it was. It was first one was Dr. Tilktari, who actually came from Kenya. He settled here. He was a good doctor, and he was murdered by he just bought the chips from the chip shop in Broomfield Road, and somebody pushed the knife in his back, and he was killed. He was a good GP. His funeral was held in Coventry Cathedral. From the temple point of view, I joined there there was quite a few people, and it was quite full rather, the cathedral, because there are racist people, but there are other sides of it. This is what I want to put across. Not everybody is racist in the city. There are good people who actually care, and they were the one who supporting us there in that time. The second murder happened he was a student on White Line pub in the city centre. He was a student. His name was Satnam Gill. He was murdered. So then Indian Work Association's a couple of colleagues, I mentioned the other day, their names is Mr. Mohan Singh and Chanchal Singh. They were actually bus drivers, and they went around to the temples to make us all aware, and there was a demonstration arranged in the city, and that was one of the very largest demonstrations in the city against racism. And the countrywide people gathered together, and it was by where is a Devab hotel on the back of that, between cathedral, there's a space. That's where the speeches and gathering took place. Obviously, we all contributed for the temples mainly contributed to support that demonstration. Obviously, I was the secretary of the temple, so that's why I was one of the organizers in the committee at that time. So race relation issues carried on. Obviously, as in 1965 there was the Race Relations Act, and that didn't certainly happen because there were issues a lot before. It was mainly Brixton where the problem started, in Brixton. That was in 58, I think. I'm just trying to remember in my head. When those Notting Hill problems started. Oh yes, in fact it was actually in August 1958 when there was a riot in Brixton, and that caused the problems, and that followed up with the race relations issues. In fact, that was a lady who actually was from, I think it was Sweden or Switzerland. I can't remember. I've got the name somewhere, but I can't remember her name at the moment. and she was the one who married to a guy who came from African area. And once they got married, then somehow the white boys attacked them, and they were, some of them, I think there were 7 members of the black community who were attacked seriously. And that's where it all started. That's where later on the protests started, and quite a few unrest. Apart from unrest, there was the issue of the police, how to handle it. The Brixton, the Notting Hill Carnival actually started as a result of that protest. That's how it went. I mean, obviously, impact from Coventry. Then also it happened in Bristol. There was issues. The people were not allowed to become or be employed by the public services. They can only work on the lower sections of society. So there was an issue, and the same is Birmingham. There was lots of issues. I remember the rivers of blood issue and so on, and the Enoch Powell's speech. Alongside, there was also people coming from other areas to support, like Malcolm X, and including our good, the hero bloke who was a boxer, Muhammad Ali. And these are the people who inspired the black people to stand up for their own rights. That's where the issue, in the end, the first Race Relations Act 1965 came in. And after that, there was amendments to it and so on. Then later on, in 1976, there was another, I think it was 76, when there was another second act came in, if my memory serves correctly. Then there was the Race Equality Council started during that time. So under that Race Equality Act, the Race Relations Council, Race Equality, or Race Coventry Council, CCRC as it was known as in short, Race Equality Council. So in fact, its chairman was former Chief Executive of the Council, Terence Gregory. He was the chair of it, and his deputy was Mr. Ziab Butt from actually Pakistani community. And is also Mr. Joshi was on that committee. He was one of the senior members. So it was working very closely with the council to work with the issues, but that did not actually address the issues which are wider public outside who were affected. So they were very much working with close officers rather than anywhere else. So what happened then, that's why after the murder, there was a Coventry, the group was set up, was called Coventry Committee Against Racism. And that's where Coventry, the other day, that carries on. Not exactly so enthusiastically, but there are members who are committed to it. And that's what I chair now, is called Coventry Against Racism. So that's where the issues Coventry got involved. And just coming back, one more issue which I should mention, in 90s, the temple I was secretary of before, but I wasn't secretary at that time, was burnt down in Jasmine Road. Guru Das Temple's building, which was actually originally a church, but taken over by the community as a temple, and that was burnt down. And there was a very little sort of information about this given by the media, because they were not much interested at that time. But obviously nowadays, everything is so blown up sometimes, but not always. There are real reasons. Even today there was an issue in the press. You can see today one of the radio presenter, Trisha Dudu, she was chased up by the others, or she was, the comments were passed. I mean, there are lots of things going on, but there are other sides as well within the city. We are working on those issues all the time to make sure Coventry stays safe. That's why we actually, as a city council, when I became a councillor, my colleagues Raj Malhotra and I worked with the Labour councillors under Jim Cunningham's leadership. We started the new policy, what's called Equal Opportunity Policy. That was in 1990. So that is developing all the time. We are still working on it. As the incidents happen, the time changes alongside the policies develop. So we are trying to do, at that time also, one thing after the demonstration happened, we used to meet in the church, in the cathedral, under the guidance of Father Peter Berry. He was the provost of the city. I think he was a dean of the cathedral. So we used to get together to work around to make sure our slogan was choose peace. So we can work with the communities and help the communities to work around. That's where we started the peace walk. From there on, it was Reverend Mukherjee who was given the responsibility to carry on with the peace walk. So that still goes on every year, going from one religious place to the others and go on many. But previously we had difficulty going to the mosques. We were not that much welcomed in those days, but nowadays, yes, now there is some sympathy on it. So people have allowed the group going there and coming back out and mixing. So there are developments going on. I think from Coventry point of view, Coventry is playing its part. And on my personal point also, when I stood for the council, Labour Party chose me to stand in the council. Obviously, in those days, let's be realistic, there wasn't that many people from black or ethnic minority communities who could make me win. So I was first, stood in '89 and won the election from Upper Stoke. Obviously, there are people who voted for Labour Party, not for me being a black or white person, they voted for the party. So the race issue wasn't there. And similarly, when I stood from Binley and Villanole, '91, there was hardly anybody in whole Villanole from Asian community. And there was a less than 2% total ethnic minority people in Binley and Villanole together. So even then they elected me and keep electing me since then, and I'm carrying on serving them with pride. And I'm very humbled by their support. I'm carrying on. But so the idea is, my point I'm making is, it's not that me as a councillor I'm better than others. The issue is there are people who don't work on the issues of race. They see the person who is working for them and they support them. That's where the issue is. But there are minority people who causing the problems. Remember, we had two incidents say along. There was last year in May, we had the right-wing group who came into Coventry and almost the town centre or city centre was blocked. And same this year, it happened again in May. And these are things which we try to avoid, that communities don't fall into the trap that we lose the peace of the city. I think that's where our work is. We should carry on supporting everybody, irrespective of what their background is, what their relation. Even today, I heard the information somewhere that the far right group, which is called Britain First, and they are planning to do some kind of event in Coventry which is not helpful for the city. We don't know actually where they are, but there is a suspicion they may be finding some, maybe today or tomorrow at this weekend. That was their target to do. So I hope everything goes all right. I hope there's no disturbance to the peace. Yes, we respect people's views, but at the same time, the views should not be poisonous, which spoil the city's peaceful environment. And one thing I also say to people, we welcome the city welcomes people from other countries or other communities. They come from war-driven areas where the difficulty, the life is very difficult there. So they come here, and we say that's why Coventry City set up the refugee centre. And I was one of those colleagues who supported it in those days. In fact, I've got a number of papers people wrote against it, letters and so on. We had another thing I forgot to mention. In 2001, this is the headline of the paper, which says, "Murder bid on hotel owner. Police suspect racist motives behind it." That's 2001. And actually, and that hotel, my wife used to work in those days there. And there's a lot of publicity after, because I was supporting the refugee center. There was a lot of opposition in the paper, lots of letters against it. And all we're trying to do is make sure people are safe and well cared. So I'm saying the same thing now. Yes, Coventry welcomes everybody, but at the same time, those people who are coming here, they should think of Coventry culture. We are a peaceful city. While we welcome them, we also expect them to respect Coventry culture. rather than they pushing their boundaries to extend. I think it's there, yes, whatever they believe, that's their private issue, but when they're coming to public, they should be respecting Coventry culture rather than pushing their boundaries. That's when they start pushing the boundaries, that's the other people start reacting to it. That's where we need to work a little bit more sympathetically to make sure people are understanding that Coventry has got its own multicultural society. That's why I changed the slogan from celebrating diversity. I say celebrate unity and diversity. We can all live together peacefully, and it's our city, we should make it better.